Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
What's up, y'all? It is January 29th, meaning that we have finally reached the end of the month. Imagine that. I thought it was never going to end. I hate January. Anybody who knows me knows that I really am not a January fan. The only thing good in January is my best friend's birthday. Other than that, it's kind of cheeks, bro. It's buns. Let's be real. Like, January is the worst month. So I'm so glad it's over. I'm so ready for February and just kind of restart, regroup, revibe. I kind of want to get some tattoos this month. I don't know. I'm feeling kind of reckless. I'm feeling kind of impulsive and it's getting bad. Like, I'm either going to get like a bunch of tattoos or I'm going to dye my hair or I'm going to shave my head like Britney Spears 2007. Like, I've got to figure this out before I do something drastic. So I think I'm just going to get a tattoo or something and hope that scratches the impulsive itch that I'm having. But if it doesn't, I might do something crazy. Tell you what. This is episode 4. If you missed the last 3 episodes, my name is Caitlin. Y'all can call me Kate. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. I'm a raging homosexual. I have ADHD. I'm passionate about life, music, human connection, and this is my podcast where I talk about anything and everything, and I'm calling it, Dude, What Was I Talking About? So the funny thing about me, right, is I have all these tattoos and all these piercings, and I listen to heavy metal, and I'm very obviously not straight, right? But the craziest part about all of that is I was actually raised Mormon. Yeah, moment of silence. I was raised LDS Mormon pretty much my whole adolescent life, which is kind of strange to think about, right? Because when you look at me and you listen to me talk, and sometimes I be cussing like a sailor, right? And you wouldn't think that I was raised in that religion, and I totally was. Actually, I was pretty devout for a while there. Not for very long, given. I know a lot of people stay in the church and get married in the church and do all the things and stuff, but I was able to leave the religion by like 15 or 16 because I realized that it wasn't something that I wanted. And that's what I wanted to talk about in this episode, guys, because the other episodes, I was just kind of being goofy, being silly, but I wanted to try something different and start talking about more personal things and seeing how you guys receive stuff like this. Because this is stuff that I don't normally talk about. It's very hard for me to be vulnerable and to be open and honest about my feelings and about how certain things affected me and how certain people affected me. I'm one of those people where I'm prideful. I don't like to admit when people hurt my feelings, or I don't want people to think that they have power over me. Even if they do, I don't want them to think that. I don't know. It's always been like a pride, ego type of thing. And I know that it's kind of sort of toxic. It would probably be better for me to air it all out. But I typically hold it in and just let it stew and manifest and cook in there and think about it way later. So that's why I'm making this episode at 26 versus talking about this stuff when I was 16. So let's start at the beginning. When I was a kid, I was very religious. I loved Jesus, right? And I loved God, and I loved the concept of the ideology and the concept of Mormonism, right? But I didn't fully understand it. I think what I was vibing more with was Christianity, and I wasn't so much vibing with Mormonism itself. But at the time, the only thing that I knew was Mormonism. That was the only thing I knew, was being an LDS Mormon. I didn't know any other religions. They tell you in the religion that every other church is wrong, we're right, they're wrong, they have the wrong gospel, they worship the wrong God. They used to talk about other religions like they were the devil, So I never got to deconstruct and really look into other religions and look into other ways of thinking until I hit my 20s. But back when I was a kid, I was very, very religious. I loved the concept and the idea of God and Jesus. And honestly, I kind of like the ideology, and I still kind of do if it's followed correctly. I think Christianity is not inherently a bad thing, but I do have an issue with organized religion. And this is my story on why. So when I was 8 years old, I got baptized into the Mormon church, and I didn't really understand it. You know, they asked you like, "Oh, do you understand why you're being baptized?" And they ask you those questions. And when you're 8, you don't really know how to answer, so you just say like, "Oh, yeah, of course. Of course I know why I'm being baptized." But really at 8 years old, you don't know shit from shit. You don't you don't understand anything at 8 years old, you know? But I agreed, and I said, "Yeah, I know what I know what I'm signing up for, and I'm willing to do it because everyone told me I had to do it." That was the only reason. And I felt like that was my only option in life, right? Was to get baptized in the religion. At the time, 8 years old, you don't know any better. So I got baptized. About a year after that, another personal thing about me, I got diagnosed with choriocarcinoma, which I will do a whole nother episode on. I'm not going down that rabbit hole, but I had choriocarcinoma, which is a form of ovarian cancer. And I was diagnosed at 9 years old. And at the time, I was surrounded by like a bunch of different nurses. A lot of them were women. And I hit puberty because of the type of cancer that I had. So I hit puberty early. And that's when I started to realize I was a little bit different, right? I started to realize I was different from my peers. I started to realize I was different from other girls. I started realizing that I had thoughts that were maybe not normal for a little girl, right? And I remember I had this one nurse, right? And I called her the coffee nurse only because she drank like a lot of coffee. It was like the one thing I noticed about her. I was like, damn, she drinks a lot of coffee. Like more so than any other nurse I had in the hospital, right? And I called her the coffee nurse. Don't remember her name, but she was telling me like this one day about her crazy ex-boyfriend. And she was like, "Oh, like I dated this guy and he thought like the CIA was after him and he was crazy and he just treated me terribly." She was telling me and my mom. And I remember thinking in my head, I was like, wow, if I was a man, I wouldn't treat a woman like that. I would treat her better. Like he's a man and he gets to date women. This is literally my thoughts. I was like, he's a man and he gets to date women and he treats them terribly. What a waste of a man. And that's not like a normal thought for like a straight female kid to have. And I never really realized that till years down the line. And I thought about it again and I was like, oh, yep, the signs were there, right? So at this point, I've been baptized for a year into the Mormon religion, right? And it was fine until I started realizing that I was a little bit different. So fast forward a couple years after that, even when I was 11, my brother actually came out as gay. And I remember thinking, shoot, man, I think I am also slightly gay. I wasn't sure, I wasn't sure if I was bi or lesbian or whatnot. But when he came out, I was like, dang, I definitely have similar thoughts. That's for sure. Right. And so I was scared. I was like, oh no. I was like, I need to kill this part of me. Right. Because in the Mormon religion, they push marriage and children, and they push like women to act a certain way and be a certain way. And I was like, I have to kill this part of me, like, because that is sinful and it's horrible and I need to get rid of it. How do I do that? Right. So I'm 11 at this point, and I was like, well, let me just try to turn to God, right? He will fix me. He fixes everything. He fixes everyone. That's what they tell you, right? So when I was 11, I was like, all right, I'm going to sit here every single day and I'm going to ask him to change me, right? Because he'll do that. He'll change me, right? So from 11 all the way up until I was almost 13, right? And I kid you not, I'm not even joking. Every single day, I would pray and ask God to change me. And now that I'm older, I'm so sad for that kid. You know, I am devastated for that kid that thought that she had to be a certain way or she was going to hell, right? I am devastated for that girl. And I wish I could hug her and tell her that it's okay to be who you are, right? But at the time, I didn't know that. So I went from 11 to 13, asking God to change me. And it didn't work. Tell you what, I think I actually got gayer. I think it got worse. Because then, when they took me off of my hormone replacement therapy blocker stuff, like I said, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother episode. But I was on hormone blockers. And when they took me off of that, I hit puberty again, right? I got my period for the second time. And I got gayer. I started having crushes on my sister's friends, right? And I started realizing, oh no, this might be a permanent part of me, right? And I was super depressed about it. I was super sad because it's not like who I wanted to be, right? Because they told me that that was not good, that you're going, they didn't necessarily say you're going to hell, but they would threaten you with your family, right? So they would say, oh, well, then you can't live with your family forever, and you can't live with Jesus, and you can't live with God. You have to go to a lower kingdom within heaven, possibly, or hell. But hopefully you get a lower kingdom, but you never see your family again. You don't get to live with them in the afterlife. How crazy is that, right? To tell people that they will never see their family again in the afterlife because of their sexuality. It's a crazy thought. It truly is. But I stayed in the closet, right? And I tried to pray the gay way. And by 13, I gave up, to be honest, because I was like, you know what? And I started critical thinking. And one thing religions hate, right? One thing religious people hate is critical thinkers. And I started thinking, I said, if this God that y'all believe in didn't like me being gay, and I begged him for a year and a half to make me straight, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he knows about it and he doesn't care as much as people think he cares about this. I was like, maybe he made me this way. I was like, maybe I was born this way. Shout out Lady Gaga. But no, seriously, I started thinking about it. I was like, what if they're wrong? Imagine that. That would be crazy, right? All these bishops and all these, people high up in the church. Like, what if they're wrong? But I did. I questioned it and I said, what if they're wrong? What if they don't know what they're talking about? What if God made me this way and they're the ones that are tripping, right? So I gave up and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just stay in the closet, make sure that I'm actually gay. And if I still am, then I'll tell everybody in a little bit, whenever I want to start dating, right? So I stayed in the religion. And when I was 14, we used to do this cool thing. It was called youth conference, right? And they would send you to, they'd basically like put you and a bunch of other kids your age at like this high school, and you'd spend like a week together and just do like Bible study, and there was like little dances and stuff so you could like meet your peers and blah, blah, blah. So at this point, I'm 14. I was still confused about my sexuality. I didn't know if I was bi or lesbian or what I was, but I just knew I wasn't straight, right? And there was this one day where the preacher guy was just going off and he was going on a tangent. And I was actually standing next to my boyfriend because I decided to get a boyfriend because that's what Mormons tell you you should do. You should get a boyfriend, you should get married in the temple and have a bunch of babies, right? So I got me a boyfriend. It's so crazy because if you looked at me in person, you'd be like, what the hell? Because no way. I don't look straight at all. Anyway, so I'm standing next to my boyfriend and the preacher guy is going off and he was like, the worst sin is homosexuality because you're not just killing your own soul, but you're killing somebody else's. my boyfriend, right, next to me, he's like, yeah, amen. And I'm like, I wonder if he knew. And because I looked at him and I was like, I kind of side-eyed him. And he's like, what? I was like, oh, nothing at all. But I remember that making me so angry because he said, it is worse than murder. He said those words. He said, homosexuality is worse than murder because you're killing your own soul and you're killing someone else's. And this is the stuff that they're indoctrinating, right? Like religions will be like, oh, I don't want my kids knowing about gay people because it will make them gay. I'm like, that's crazy because religion, all it does from the time that you are born until the time that you leave the religion is indoctrinate you. They shove marriage into your face. They shove being straight and they shove children, right? Into your, right in front of your face. And they're like, this is what you need to do. Don't listen to anybody else and deny who you are to the core for us, right? And I think it's so ass backwards because how are you going to stand there and preach about being straight and how that's the most important thing and that homosexuality is the most evil thing you can do, but then say you don't want kids to know about gay people and you don't want them to be exposed to trans people and you don't want them to be exposed to drag queens. Shut up. Shut up, bro. Shut up. Because what you're literally doing is indoctrinating children while you're telling us, gay people, not to indoctrinate your children. It's crazy. It's wild. It's a wild concept, right? So it made me angry and it fueled a fire within me. From the minute he said that, I lost it in my head. I was like, this is not something I want to be a part of. This is not something I want to support. Whether I'm bi or a lesbian, I don't care. I don't want to support this. I don't want to support this rhetoric, and I don't want to support these people. And I don't want to give no money to this damn church because you're making all these people, because I looked around the crowd and there was a few that I could tell, you got your gaydar. And there was a few that I could tell were gay. And the suicide rates in Utah within teenagers is very, very high. And it's because the way that they preach all of this hatred and then tell us that we're the problem. Okay? It was awful. It was awful. It stuck with me for a long time. But I still tried, right? Like I still tried to date dudes and I still tried to suppress my feelings for girls because I thought that was the right thing to do. Even though I knew and I had already told like some of my family and they already kind of knew, I still tried to suppress that part of myself and it was solely because of religion. It's so crazy too because I've like, anytime I start dating like a new girl, like I always ask her like, were you raised religious? And then she says no. And I can't even imagine what that had to have felt like, right? Because me being raised religious, I was raised to hate myself, okay? I was indoctrinated to hate who I was at the core, right? And some of these people never experienced that. And I'm glad for them, but it also makes me low-key envious also. Because I'm like, what do you mean you never tried to pray to God to change you? What do you mean you just felt comfortable being gay? Like they understand like the societal, like whenever I talk to these girls, right? They understand the societal pressure, but they don't understand having societal pressure on top of religious pressure. Because yeah, society is one thing, right? But then when you have society telling you, ugh, that's gross, that's wrong. Ugh, why are there gay people on my TV screen? Why is there lesbians in this movie, right? You have that pushed in your face from society, but then add on top of that religious leaders that tell you homosexuality is worse than murder. And that if you're homosexual, it's the same thing as a porn addiction. They also compared it to porn addiction. And then I feel so bad because luckily, I was a critical thinker and left the church early, but there are people that didn't. And there are people that ended up in conversion therapy, okay, which is abuse. It's mental abuse. And I see stories like that all the time, and it makes me so freaking sad, dude. It makes me sad that these people can't just love themselves because we are taught and conditioned to not love ourselves. It's horrible. It's genuinely terrible. So after that youth conference thing, I decided that I was going to start slowly dipping my toe into embracing my sexuality, right? So my friend invited me to Pride, and it was in 2014. And I didn't want my parents to know I was going. So I lied about where I was going. And I actually ended up at Pride. And I had a blast, dude. That was my first Pride ever. And I was shocked at how open these people were and how happy they looked and how they were just so comfortable being in their own skin. And again, I was envious. I was jealous. I was like, man, I wish I could do that, right? I was like, I wish I could just be comfortable in my own skin like that. And I was like, I hope one day I'm as happy as they are and I am able to enjoy it too, right? But I had a blast. I took a lot of pictures and I ended up posting those pictures on Facebook, right? And I had a lot of Mormon leaders on Facebook. And I had this one leader message me and be like, hey, Caitlin, like, I haven't talked to you in a long time. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to, like, go get some ice cream or something, right? And I was like, sure, that's fine. We can go get some ice cream, right? So this leader picks me up. We go and get ice cream at McDonald's. We got some vanilla cones. And then when she was driving me back to my house, she said, hey, so I noticed on your Facebook that you were sharing some like pride stuff. And she was like, I understand that you want to support that and stuff. She's like, but what made you post that? And of course, me being avoidant and not willing to talk about my emotions and also not really ready to come out of the closet fully, especially to the church. I told her, I said, well, my siblings are gay and I just want to be a good ally and I want to support them. And she was like, I understand that. She's like, the church doesn't agree with stuff like that and doesn't agree with people like that. And I was like, I understand. I know. And she was like, so it's okay if you went this one time. She's like, it's okay to love the sinner without loving the sin. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that saying. I genuinely hate it, right? Because it's like, what if me as a gay person, right? What if I said, love the believer, hate the belief? You would be offended as hell, right? You'd be pissed. You'd be like, what the hell did you just say to me? Except you probably wouldn't say that. You'd probably say, what the heck did you just say to me? And I would say, oh, you heard me. Love the believer, hate the belief. You would look at me crazy. You would be super offended. But yet they don't see it that way. When you say, love the sinner, not the sin, you're saying the same thing. Okay? And not only that, but I don't think who you are as a core person and your sexuality has anything to do with sin. Okay? First and foremost. But either way, I digress. The point is, she said those words, and I hate that saying, right? But, I just kind of nodded and agreed. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. We'll let this one slide. Well, then, the worst thing any religious kid could go through happened. But the best thing for all the gay people. 2016, they legalized homosexual marriage, right? And the church was not happy. The church was not happy at all. And they gave us these papers that said, basically, that even though it's legal in the law's eyes, it is not legal in God's eyes, essentially. And I was getting so sick of going to all these church things, all these meetings, all these Bible studies, and them just rag on homosexuality the whole time. They didn't talk about, like, promiscuity. They did a little bit, but not as much as they talked about homosexuality. I'll tell you that right now. They didn't talk about murder. They talked about homosexuality and how terrible it was at every single event I attended. And I was getting so fed up with it. I was like, I've about had it up to here. Like, I don't know how my parents are going to take me leaving the church. I was like, but at this point, I'm getting sick of this because they're making it seem like this is the worst thing that anyone could ever do. And it's not. And it's not. I know a lot of gay people that are the coolest, nicest, most understanding people that I've ever met. And some of the worst people I've ever met go to church every Sunday. But yet they're telling us that it's gay people, that gay people are the issue, that being homosexual is the issue. So again, grappling with my own sexuality and also my own feelings of shame and guilt for being who I am, for something that I literally could not control. I tried to pray the gay away. I tried to change myself. I tried to do everything I could. I even tried to date dudes, okay? And nothing changed my mind because even though I was unsure if I was lesbian or bisexual, I knew that I wanted to be with a woman in the end, right? For sure. Like, I just don't see my life ending any other way than with a woman, right? So then there's another time. It doesn't end. There's another time. I was in there with a teacher or youth leader, and it was just me and her in this room. And she ends up telling me the same thing, like, oh, I saw on Facebook that you went to Pride, blah, blah, blah. Because now, fast forward, this is like a year after the first lady. And I said, yeah, I did go to Pride. And she was like, I used to support that too, but I just wanted you to know that we don't support those people and we don't support those beliefs and we don't support those things. And I looked at her like she was the craziest woman I'd ever met because at this point, I am over it. I'm tired. I'm tired of hating myself. I'm tired of shaming myself. I'm tired of living in the shadows. I'm tired of hiding my girlfriends from my family, from my friends, from whoever else I was scared that was going to judge me, from the church. I was tired of hiding who I really was and who I intended to stay for the rest of my life, right? I got sick of it. Had it up to here, right? So I looked at her like she was crazy. I really did. I let her talk though. I didn't say much. And when I left that meeting, I told myself, and I made a promise to myself, I am never stepping foot in that church again, unless it's for somebody's funeral or something. I was like, I am never walking into a Mormon church for church services ever again. And the reason being is because, and I don't think it's just Mormonism. I'm not saying it's just Mormons. I think this is every organized religion that's Christian, right? Because they had this whole idea, that this ideology is so true, right? Which is fine if you believe that. But then they take one little tiny passage because they read the Bible and they believe that the Bible is the holy book. They take one small passage from the Bible and run with it. They full sprint with that one passage that says, man shall not lie with man. And they run with it. And they make every single person that is questioning their sexuality or that isn't heterosexual feel horrible about themselves. And I think that's awful because that's universal. That's not just Mormons. That's Catholics. That's Baptists. That's Protestants. I could go on and on and on and on and on. It's every single organized Christian religion. Even the Church of Christ. Even that church, right? Even that church, they have problems with gay people. It's every single Christian ideology, religion. And I have no issue with Christian ideology. And that's the craziest part. Because I feel like even though I have horrible experiences with the church, I think Christianity itself is not a bad concept. If you follow Christ, if you follow what Christ actually told you to follow, which is love thy neighbor, be kind to everybody, don't steal, don't lie, don't murder, don't cheat, then yes, it's a great ideology. But when you start throwing extra shit in there that you read in the Bible somewhere and it was one singular passage and you run with it and you use that as an excuse to hate people and make people hate themselves, then I have a problem with you, okay? I have a problem with you. I think if religion makes you a better person, then sure, there's nothing wrong with it. But if it's making you a worse person because it's making you decide that you're the dictator and you're the judge of all these people's lives, that's where I start to have an issue with religion, right? Because other than that, I don't really care what you believe in as long as you're a good person. And I think it's important that you're a good person because you want to be a good person and not because you feel like you have to be a good person to get to heaven, right? Well, I don't want to go to hell, so I better be a good person. That's not a good reason to be a good person. You should just want to be a good person because you want to be a good person. Point blank. That's it. That's the T, right? No one should have to tell you to be a decent human being. No one should have to tell you to love everybody. No one should have to tell you not to lie, cheat, or steal, right? That shouldn't even be a question. But yet, most of people's, these religious people, most of their reasoning for being a good person is because they don't want to go to hell. And then most of the reasoning for them to come up to you and tell you that you're a sinner is because they're afraid you're going to hell. Like, why do you care so much about what happens to me when I die? Why do you care? I don't even care that much. I don't think about it. I don't lose sleep every night thinking about my death and what happens after. It's not something I think about often. But the other thing about organized religion is, especially like Mormonism itself, right, that I had a huge issue with, was the misogyny. It was a very male-dominated religion. It was the men are the bishops. The men have the healing powers. Women can't put their hands on your head and heal you. Women aren't allowed to do that. It was a very misogynistic religion as well. And I think we should be building women up. But the thing that they also preached about and taught about was that the other thing that they preached about was to be a submissive wife and be a good wife, and that you are to raise the children, stay home, cook, clean, be submissive to your man, all this stuff, right? But it didn't really tell men too much of what they needed to do. Like, women were supposed to be cooking and sewing like it's a little house on the prairie, But I was having this conversation with my mom, and I was like, well, what about the women that don't want kids? What if they don't? Or what if the woman is infertile, right? What if she can't have children? And then you're telling her her worth is all in being a mother? I feel like we should be building women up and be like, you know what? If motherhood is what you want to do, then do it. And if it's not, don't feel pressured. Don't feel like you have to. That's how you end up with shitty parents anyway, right? Because they feel pressured to be parents, or they accidentally become parents. Those are the two ways you get shitty parents, right? It's either societal pressure and they felt like they had to, or it was an accident and they're like, shit, I didn't mean to do that, right? So I think if motherhood is something that you really, really want in life, then fuck it, do it, go after it. But if it's not something that you're dying to do or dying to be a part of, then don't even worry about it, to be honest. I told my mom, I was like, we should be teaching women that they could be great mothers and great homemakers, or they could be a great CEO. They could be a great leader. They could be a great, I don't know, like, the other thing about most religions is they won't even let a woman marry you. That's weird. Why not? Why not let her be I don't even know the word for him, but why not let the woman marry you guys? Doesn't matter. It has to be a dude standing there to marry you guys? I don't think so. It's just a legal contract, right? So I don't understand the misogynistic nature of some of these religious movements. When did they decide that men had all the power and women have none besides having children? When did that become a thing? Because I am not here for that. I think if women want to be CEO, if women want to be business women, if women want to be a leader, if women want to be a firefighter, a cop, I think they should be able to do that. I think that their life shouldn't have to just revolve around being a wife and a mother if that's not what she wants to do in life, regardless on if she's gay or straight. I'm talking about every single woman here. Like, you should have the choice and the option of what you want in your future and what you look forward to. When you look 10 years down the road, what do you see? Do you see you rocking a baby, or do you see you leading a company to success? And that's what we need to start teaching women more. We need to start empowering women. The other thing that's crazy about religion is they don't talk about Mary Magdalene very often. And that was one of Jesus's homies. That was one of his best friends. That was a woman. Why don't we talk about her? Why isn't she in the book? Okay. There's just a lot with religion that makes me kind of resentful. Okay. It makes me resentful for the little kid that I had to go through that and think that there was something wrong with me because of other people in the religion. Other people made me feel like I was broken. Other people made me feel like I had to live a life that was not going to fulfill me, right? Because when I think of like my rich life, right, I think about having a wife, even if we're not legally married. But I feel like mine is having a lifelong partner, traveling, and peaceful, like a peaceful household, dude. That's what I want to see in my 10, 15-year range, right? But if yours is different and you see a husband and a white picket fence and a baby, do that. Do that. If that's who you want to be. I want to be successful in my career and I want to have a lasting, long-term love, right? That's what I want. That's what I ultimately want. But the unfortunate part about being raised religious is it kind of skews your view on a lot of things. I think it gave me low-key like internalized homophobia, right? I have an issue with that. Like, to elaborate, if I see like a lesbian that is kind of like on the more masculine side, like I am as well, right? But if I see another one, it kind of gives me the ick. And I think it's internalized homophobia. And I think it's actually projection of my own self-hatred that has never truly went away because of how I was raised, right? So when I see someone that kind of reflects myself in a way, it gives me the ick. And it's horrible. It's something I've been trying to work on. I've been trying to be less homophobic towards other gay people because that's fucking stupid. How are you gay and homophobic, right? But it is something that I struggle with, and I think it's projection. I think it's because I see myself in them, and I don't like that. I don't like seeing the part of me that I tried to hide for so long, that I finally started embracing it, like really in my late teens, early 20s is when I started embracing who I actually was. And I think that's where the internalized homophobia comes from. So I've been working on that one. I've been trying to get better. I'm trying to be a good person, damn it. Like, without religion. I want to be a good person because I want to be a good person, not because someone's telling me I need to be a good person or I'll go to hell. You know what I'm saying? But I've struggled with that. And then the other thing I've struggled with is toxic, like, thoughts, you know? Like, anytime our relationship doesn't work out, I start thinking, well, maybe it's because I'm trying to date women and that's a sin. Maybe it's because I'm a sinner. I have toxic thoughts like that. And I'm self-aware enough to know that it's toxic, but I was so indoctrinated in the religion that it's hard for me to compartmentalize sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, well, maybe this is just how it was meant to be. Maybe I was supposed to be alone forever. Maybe I'm supposed to be everybody's platonic soulmate. Maybe I'm supposed to be everybody's platonic homie, right? And I start thinking like that, and I start having really toxic thoughts, and I think that's because of being conditioned into religion. But I will say being raised religious wasn't all bad, right? I think it did give me a sense of direction. I think it did help me when I was a kid, especially to like pray and believe that there was someone listening to me. And I also believe that the ideology itself, if you follow Christ, is not bad. So I believe that my mom raising me, because my mom was a good mom, man. She never judged. When I did come out, she was cool with it. And she did her best to understand. And when she did talk to me about religion, it was about Jesus and about Jesus's teachings and Jesus's parables. So I think if you follow Jesus, there's nothing inherently wrong, actually, with Christianity. The ideology is fine if you follow Christ. But unfortunately, a lot of these Christians that say that they're Christian are not Christian because they don't follow Jesus. They follow parts of the Bible. The parts that they like of the Bible is what they follow. And the parts that they don't like, they throw it in your face. You're a sinner. You're gross. You're disgusting. And then use God as their shield. Well, I just care about you, man. I just don't want you going to hell. Okay, well, care about me some less. Or care about me less then. if this is how it's going to be, if you're going to come up to me and make me feel terrible about myself, then care about me less. Don't care about me at all, actually. If this is your version of caring, I don't want it. I don't want any part of that. But it is difficult trying to unlearn something that you were indoctrinated in your whole life. And it's hard to deconstruct that. Like when I started actually deep diving spirituality and deep diving religious, and I finally looked at myself and saw the flaws that religion instilled upon me, I started to realize, I was like, man, there's a lot that I need to work on, and there's a lot that I'm not sure I believe. And so I've kind of leaned more into being agnostic and spiritual. Like I just believe, be a good person and good things come back. Be a shitty person and shitty things are going to come back. It's karma. Call it karma, call it God, call it whatever you want to call it, but you get what you give. So if you're putting out good vibes into the universe, if you're loving people unconditionally, if you're being respectful, even when you're angry, right? Even when you're angry, if you're being respectful and you're trying to see the other person's point of view, as long as you're trying to strive to be better, then better will come to you, right? That's what I believe now. And even though I left the religion at 16, I've carried parts of it. I've carried good and bad parts of it. I think it gave me a good foundation on being a good person. But then once I left the religion, I had to actively choose to still be a good person, regardless, right? Because now I'm being a good person because I want to be a good person. I'm not being a good person because I want to appease a God, right? And I want to be with my family forever and I don't want to go to hell. Like, no, those aren't my reasons for being a good person. My reasons for being a good person are because I love people. I love humans. I love connecting with people. I love talking to people. I love it when people vent to me, dude. Please vent to me. I love it. Because I like to be people's safe space, right? I want to be the person that you turn to when you're in your darkest moment. Because honestly, when I was younger, I didn't have that person. So if I can be that person for 1, 2, 3 people, I've served my purpose on this earth well, right? And that's all I care about, honestly. And this is not to like talk myself up like I'm some saint or something. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes. But you know what happened when I made those mistakes? Karma came right back the fuck around and kicked me in the ass, right? And that's why I believe in karma. Because it's definitely come back to bite me, and it will come back to bite you. Call it karma, call it God, call it whatever you want. But a lot of these Christians, I think, have some terrible karma coming back their way because of how they made other people feel. Whether they knew that they were doing that or not, you know, but you got to learn a lesson at some point. You got to have consequences for your actions, whether you're aware of them or not, whether you're aware of how you're making people feel, or whether you're aware of if your doctrine is right or wrong, right? Karma will come back and come and bite your ass. It did for me. It does for everybody. So I just believe that you should always try to beat yourself. Beat the past version of you and try to be the better version of you. Try to be the best version of you. But it won't happen overnight, you know? You won't just wake up one day and just be the best person ever. That's just not how life works. But I think if you're striving to be a better person because you want to be, then I think you're already following Christ, right? Because that's what Christianity is. Jesus wanted you to be a good person because it's the right thing to do. Religion wants you to be a good person so you don't go to hell. And that's the difference. And that's something that I've had to compartmentalize. But I think it's something I will always kind of struggle with is my own internal thoughts. I don't hate myself anymore. I'm very proud. And, you know, I tell everyone I'm gay. Anytime I'm in a new relationship, I tell everybody about my girlfriend, you know. Like, I'm very open about it now, but it took me a while to get to the point where I was comfortable enough to do that. And I blame it all on society, and I blame it all on organized religions, because I think that they're teaching you the wrong way and they're teaching you the wrong thing, whether they know it or not. Like I said, I'm not saying they're terrible. Some people are, but I'm not saying religion itself is terrible. I think the people that run it maybe don't know, or they're naive, or they don't critically think, or they take a section of the Bible and ignore the rest of it, and ignore Jesus's teachings, and ignore everything that he said, and just go along with what they have in their head as their narrative. So I hope this wasn't super long and confusing. If you guys have any questions, even about like Mormonism or any of that stuff, I can let you guys know. Thank you guys for listening to this one. This one was kind of a long rant, but I feel like it shaped who I am as a person. And I've come to reflect upon it a lot in my 20s. A lot. And it's something that I've been kind of grappling with for years. And it's not something that I talk about often. And I decided that, like, since I have this podcast, I might as well talk about it sometimes. Like, talk about some of the things that I struggled to talk about before. Now that I have a voice and I'm older and I'm wiser and my frontal lobe is developed. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway. But seriously, though, I appreciate all the support. You guys, I can't even talk anymore. I don't know, man. I appreciate all the support, and I hope you guys liked this episode. I will continue to do more, like, vulnerable, deeper episodes if you guys are into that. If not, I can go back to the funny stuff. I'll probably mix some funny episodes in there too, you know? This is an ADHD-coded podcast, so I'm just going to talk about whatever I'm feeling in the moment. But thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for listening to the end. If you guys have comments, suggestions, concerns, please let me know. And yeah, I hope everybody's weekend is going great. I hate ending these. These are so hard to end, man. Dude, what was I talking about?
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.